All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. We are excited to have a good group here to learn a little bit about the daily life of our students here at SCO. So we thank you for being here. My name is Rebecca Griffin, and I am the Student Services and Admissions Officer at Southern College of Optometry. And so the purpose of today's session is for those of you who are wondering what optometry school is actually like on a day-to-day basis. If you're wondering how different it is from undergraduate studies in school, and what you would be doing in classes and labs and in your free time, and how much studying you'll be doing. That's the purpose of today's session, to give you a little bit of a clue as to what that will look like. And not for myself, of course, because I am not an optometry student. So to help me answer these questions, I've invited a few of our current students who will introduce themselves in just a minute to talk with you all today. So we want to keep it pretty open conversation. I have some questions for the students to prompt them, but along the way, if you have any questions, we encourage you to ask those of our students as well. So before we get started, I just wanted to show you some information about some upcoming events. For those of you who are tuned into our webinar series, you know that we do these monthly and we have a different topic each month. I have the webinar series schedule on the slide there, you can see. So this is what we have on the docket for spring term. The next webinar will be in March on the 20th, which is a Tuesday at 4 o'clock Central Time. And I put the wrong topic there. So the March webinar, will be the OAT prep. So obviously we're doing the day in the life webinar today. So OAT prep session on Tuesday, March 20th at 4 o'clock. We also have our open house event coming up in March if you would like to visit our campus. It's a Saturday and will include tours during the open house, as well as conversations with current students and some of our faculty members who are all ODs, and you'll get to hear from admissions officers. So it'll be a fun day. We'll give you food and freebies and things too. So March 24th, if you'd like to come on down, our registration for the event is open. You can bring up to 2 guests. Everything is free, and we hope you consider joining us. So I put the link to the website there where you can find more information and figure out how to register. All right. Moving on, I did mention that we encourage questions today. So using the GoToMeeting chat box there, or the question box, if you want to submit your questions, we'll make sure that either myself or our students on the line will get to your questions throughout the session. And without any further ado, let me introduce you to today's panelists. You see their lovely faces there. We have Courtney and Tim, who are first-year students, as well as Kelly and Jed, who are third-year students. And I will ask if they would like to go ahead and introduce themselves a little bit. If you guys could each talk about where you're from, where you went to school, and why you ended up coming here to SCO. And Courtney, why don't you kick it off?
Hi guys, my name is Courtney. I am from Tampa, Florida, and I went to USF, which is the University of South Florida, and I chose SCO. I guess I kind of broke it down into 3 reasons that I chose SCO. First one would be our academics here, as far as the board passage rates and all of the other kind of demographics of the student body here. I could tell that SCO is really into academics, which is going to make a big deal for me. Second, when I came here for my interview, I fell in love with Memphis. I thought Memphis was super cool, and I could see myself living here. And thirdly, when I came to the campus, I was super impressed by the facility, by our labs, by the eye center, which is so cool. It's almost overwhelming how cool it is. And those are kind of the 3 things that set SCO apart for me from the other schools that I interviewed at.
Great, thanks, Courtney. How about Tim?
Hey y'all, I'm Tim. I'm from Southern California in the Los Angeles area. and I went to UC Irvine, and I chose SCO. I broke it down into 4 reasons, and there's a lot of overlap with Courtney. I chose, so one of the main reasons was education. I wanted to, have a great education. I think Courtney mentioned the board passage rate and the clinical exposure. I think we have about 3,100 patient encounters. That was really impressive. And the other 3 would be cost. I feel like the amount we pay for our education definitely is one of the lower amounts here at SEO. And I fell in love with the campus, Memphis, just everything about SEO. I think the people really helped solidify that with the warmth and community that I felt here. And the last reason is the Hayes Center for Practice Excellence. And I feel like this is like a really unique aspect that SEO offers, which is like learning about the private practice business side of optometry. And yeah.
Awesome, Tim. Thanks. And how about Kelly?
Hi guys, my name's Kelly. I'm originally from a small town in southeast South Dakota, and I went to undergrad at a small college in Minnesota called Concordia College. I'm a 3rd year here, and the reason that I chose SCO, the number one reason was the people. When I came here for my interview, I didn't know very much about SEO at all, and I was just blown away when I got here. I fell in love right away because everyone was so kind and welcoming. They really made me feel wanted. When I went to some other schools for some interviews, I felt like it was definitely an interview process where I was like auditioning to get into the school. But here I felt like they really wanted me, and everyone was just super approachable, whether they were students, faculty, staff, and that was probably the number one reason that I came here. The other thing that had a huge impact for me was the facilities here at SCO. The eye center is huge. We see a huge number of patients. We have all kinds of technology. We're always getting new things, and the patient demographic is a really great learning environment. And so those were probably the 2 biggest reasons that I chose SCO.
All right, and last but not least, Mr. Jed.
Hey guys, I'm Jed Harrison. I'm from Utah. I went to school at Brigham Young University, and I chose SEO for many reasons. Before ever coming out here for my interview, though, I kind of made a list of some of the top schools that I was interested in, and SEO kept ending up on top for board's passage rates, and their clinical experience has been as has been mentioned already by everyone. We've got a great clinic here, and the patient encounters that we have are unlike anywhere else in the country. So I was really looking forward to getting a good clinical experience. Also, SCO is a standalone institution. The president, many of the vice presidents, all the faculty, they're all optometrists, and they all make decisions on where the money goes, what our schedule is, all for us as students. And I thought that was kind of impressive, and that we're able to get a lot of benefit from that. And when SEO looked great on paper, and when I came, it was even better than I could have imagined. The clinic blew me away. Like Kelly mentioned, the Southern hospitality was alive and well, and that was really fun to see. And I just felt very welcome here. Memphis is a great place, a thriving city, and they're continuing to grow every year. And that was all very impressive to me.
All right, super. Well, thanks, panelists. We're really happy to have you all here today to give your wisdom and guidance to our students out there who are thinking about SEO or who have decided to come here themselves. We do have a question that has popped up from a student. If one of you wants to chime in, volunteer to answer. The question is, if any of you interviewed at other schools, could you compare and contrast what you experienced at other schools, maybe generally speaking, compared to SEO? Does anybody have insight on that?
I can kind of talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
since I kind of already mentioned before. SEO was my first interview, and so I was definitely really nervous for it, and I didn't know a lot about the school when I came in, but like I mentioned before, it was really awesome because everyone was so welcoming. I felt like they wanted me here as much as I wanted to be at SEO. And everything was very conversational, whether it was an interview or, you know, the tour, everything like that. I just felt really, really comfortable. The other places that I interviewed were similar kind of processes for the day, like interviews and that kind of stuff. And everything was fairly conversational at those as well. But I felt like it was a little bit more of a auditioning process, kind of like I mentioned before. And that's what I felt like set SEO apart for me, was because of the environment that I felt here. Does that kind of answer your question?
I think that was helpful, Kelly. Thank you. We had another question pop up from Karen. It was, how demanding are the classes for the first year, and how is adjusting from a college setting to a professional year school setting like? And those are really great questions, and they're actually built into that presentation. So I have those specific questions to ask our panelists in just a minute here, so stay tuned. For the next slide, I would love it if our panelists could describe a little bit about what the daily schedule is like academically. So you'll hear it's a little bit different between the first and the third year. So if Courtney, maybe you want to describe your schedule as a first year student to kick it off.
Sure. So our class is about 135 students, and in the morning we are in a pretty big lecture hall, and we get there around first semester we got there at 8. This semester we're getting in around 7:45 is when class starts, and we have 4 classes in the morning. So we have 10-minute breaks in between each. They're about 50 to an hour and 10 minutes, and then you get a break in between. And then you have lunch, and then after lunch, you go to a lab. So they split our class up into about 5 groups, and each group goes to a different lab every day. So we have our methods lab that we have twice a week in the afternoons, and so that's the one where you get to stand with the four-opter, ask 1 or 2, and you learn all of your doctory skills. We have optics lab, which we're learning how light works, and then we have a couple other labs that are kind of intermixed in there between first and second semester of first year. That answers the question, I think. That's how classes work, and we are kind of with the same people all day long, so you get to meet your class and get to know them very well, very quickly.
Awesome. And Tim, as a first year student, do you want to talk a little bit about the schedule, what you like about your classes and labs this year, and things you might be looking forward to later in the program?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much enjoying something called Theory Lab and Theory Class, which is basically just optometry class, how to be an optometrist. We learn like our skills that we're going to use for the rest of our lives, and I like it because it's like really practical and what we're going to be doing. And I think like it was like last week where we first got introduced to something called the ophthalmoscope, where we finally get to look at the retina of our classmates, and that was really cool. We got to see that for the first time, and it's kind of like a milestone, so that kind of got me excited as well as my other classmates. And yeah, I think that would be like the most enjoyable aspect of our first year education for me.
Awesome. All right, Jed, do you want to talk a little bit about the third year schedule?
Yeah, for sure. So third year, things change quite a bit. You're not in class as much as you are first and second year. At the end of second year, you do what's called a pre-clinic checkout. You pass off all the skills that you learned in theory lab and a couple of your other labs, like Tim mentioned, and you basically just pass those off with a staff doctor and show that you're ready to go to clinic. And then third year is when you start to see real patients in the clinic. Before that, you have a few shadowing opportunities, but third year is the first time where you get to sit down one-on-one with a patient and start from the beginning. You ask them what issues are going on with their vision, and then you use the knowledge that you learned in classes and labs to figure out what's going on and make a treatment plan. And it's really exciting, really intimidating at first, as you can imagine. But the staff doctors are amazing. They help out quite a bit. The way that our clinic is designed, we have several different suites throughout the clinic. And, one will be contact lens, another one is adult primary care, another one pediatrics. And you have different rotations each day in one of those suites. So once a week, we have an adult primary care assignment. And then once a week, maybe we're in vision therapy or we're in contact lens helping out there. So your assignment is different every day. And I like that they do that because when I go to contact lens, I know I'm going to be fitting contact lenses there and I'm going to get that experience that I want. And when I go to pediatrics, I'm going to see kids and I'm going to be able to help them out there. And I like that because I'm able to get the exposure that I want every day and what I expect to see. So that's really nice. Our the suites themselves are divided up to where there's one doctor per 4 students, which is a really good ratio to where we get the help that we need throughout our exam. We use electronic health records, and the doctor is able to follow along with our exam throughout the entire exam process and help us out if needed. But for the most part, they give us quite a bit of independence in making clinical decisions on treatment plans, things like that. And it's really exciting because it's when you start to really feel like a real doctor and putting your skills to use. So right now, this semester, we're a little bit more busy because we're studying for part 1 of boards that's coming up next month. But when we're not studying for boards, we're in clinic. We have 3 clinic assignments during the week. And then we have classes in the mornings on 5 days of the week. And then the additional 2 afternoons that we have off are spent studying for boards.
Thanks. Busy. And Kelly, could you talk a little bit about what you're looking forward to in your 4th year, a little bit about how the 4th year is laid out structurally and where you will end up?
Yeah, so how 4th year works is we have 3 4-month rotations. And so one of those is spent in Memphis at the eye center, rotating through different clinic areas like pediatrics and ocular disease and contact lens. And so that's one rotation. And then another one is a private practice location. And then the last one is an institutional site. And so that's oftentimes like a ODMD office, a referral center, a hospital, VA, an environment like that. And so for me, I'm really excited. Those rotations, we've selected those already and they're coming up really soon in May. And it's going to be really awesome to get to experience some new practices in different areas of the United States outside of Memphis, and getting to see different types of practices and seeing different types of patients. And I think that's going to be really enjoyable and really help broaden our horizons a little bit with patient care. I'm also really excited about getting more into some of the specialty areas that we can focus on, like contact lens or ocular disease. Because the different sites that you go to for your rotations, sometimes they're geared a little bit more towards a particular area. So if you're really interested in the vision therapy, you can go to a vision therapy heavy kind of clinic. And so I'm really excited about the opportunities that I have there to learn a lot more about contact lens and disease, because those are 2 of the areas that I'm really interested in. What's great about our rotation process and everything is that you can go pretty much anywhere in the US that you can think of. There's probably a site, and you get to kind of pick and choose where you want to be at and what kind of environments you want to be in. And so I'm really excited for that coming up soon.
Great, thanks. And we had a couple questions come through. So one question from Lily. So when you come in as a first year, there's about 140, there's 136 students in classes, and she's asking if that is the class that you will be with for all 4 years, or do you register and go to different classes, kind of like in undergrad? And that's something I can actually easily answer. It is a lockstep curriculum, so everybody in the program within a certain class, you're all taking the same classes at the same time. So especially your didactic classes, you're on the same schedule throughout the 4 years. Where it differs to some degree, as Courtney was kind of mentioning, is there are different lab schedules. So the group of 136 students is broken up into around 4 or 5 different lab groups, and you'll do the same labs throughout the week, but on different days. So you're with a smaller cohort for your labs, and an even smaller cohort, of course, for your clinics, as I think Jed mentioned that you're with 3 other students and 1 staff doctor for your clinical rotations. With your lab groups, those do change from semester to semester so that you're not with the same people each time. You get more practice, you get to see more eyes as a result of that, and work with new people each semester. But the benefit to that is you kind of are asking, Lily, is that you don't need to worry about registering each semester. The school registers you for the classes, and everybody's taking the same thing, so that process is streamlined. Another question that came in, what was the most valuable thing that you did to get into optometry school, or to know that you wanted to be an optometrist? Any of our panelists want to take that question?
I can. For me, I think one of the biggest things that was most important for me prior to coming into optometry school, or prior to deciding on optometry, was shadowing. And I think that's important for any health profession, or if you're thinking about optometry, but maybe also considering dentistry, shadowing in all of the areas that you're interested in. Because if you find out that you don't like it, that's okay. That's just means that then maybe that area isn't for you. But I would definitely recommend shadowing in certain areas and shadowing multiple different doctors. For me, when I kind of decided I was thinking about optometry, I shadowed my own optometrist. I came in for an afternoon, and every optometrist, if you call them up and are, like, hey, I'd really like to come shadow, almost every single one is going to be like, yeah, great, come in, because they really want to show you, what their life is like. And so I shadowed my own optometrist, and then I proceeded to shadow a few other optometrists as well, and then actually got a job in a clinic. And I think that was probably the most beneficial thing for me, because I was able to be exposed to what life is actually like in a private practice, and kind of how the clinic runs, and all the different areas. Like, I teched, I also was an optician, I worked in the lab, I worked at the front desk and did some insurance things. And so I think getting yourself into an office and being exposed to what life is going to be like outside of or after optometry school is really important.
Great, thank you. All right, we had another question come through from Blade, who's asking about how first year is different than undergrad. Is the material harder, or is it just more volume, and how hard is the transition? And that question is actually a great transition to my next slide, which is essentially those same questions. So I'll ask each of you, kind of just go down the line: Courtney, then Tim, then Kelly, then Jed. If you want to talk briefly about what you felt were the biggest differences between undergraduate and professional studies, and what your transition was like moving from undergrad, or if you took a gap year or whatnot, and then moving into the program at SCO.
Sure. So I guess there's a couple of big differences between undergraduate and being here at SCO. First, to answer your question, is it harder, or is it just more volume? Both. It is more volume, and definitely things are, I don't want to say harder, you're making yourself think in a way that you haven't thought before. A lot of the times, we learn like, okay, this is, this disease, for example, and these are the symptoms that go along with it. So you learn that, but then you have to be able to go, oh, these are the symptoms. So I think it could be any number of these things. So you're kind of having to train your brain to think more like a doctor, which is kind of a weird thing, but you definitely get into a groove. And being first year, I've not found my groove quite yet, but we're getting there. And then another big difference between undergrad and being here is, so I'm from a large school, and being from a large school, I was used to sitting in a lecture hall with 300 students. The teacher didn't care if I was there or not. And being here, even though I'm with 135 people, my teachers know my name. And that kind of makes a big difference. It's a little intimidating for me because I can kind of be shy when it comes to teachers, or I can get intimidated quickly. But the fact that they know my name and they ask me how things are going, or when I have a practical and I have a teacher who I know knows me, it makes me want to do better, and it makes me feel more comfortable because I know that that specific teacher does want me to do well. And that's been a big deal for me. And then, am I supposed to be talking about transitions too? Okay. And how was my transition into optometry school? So I did take a gap year. In my gap year, I did get married. And so my transition into optometry school was also a transition into Memphis and also a transition into married life. So it was kind of threefold, but it surprisingly went really smoothly. And a lot of that is SCO itself. Everyone's really friendly here. Everyone knows that we're all kind of going through a weird transition, but it's been made a bunch of times before, and SCO has put people through this transition a bunch of times before. And I think just the friendliness, and everyone in your class is going through the same transition. So you're almost like battle buddies. You go through this like tough transition and you all become really close really quickly because of that. So it's been a fun transition. I have loved every second of it.
Hey, it's me, and I would say the biggest difference between undergraduate and SCO for me was the exam spacing. So in undergrad, I would purposefully choose my classes knowing the like final exam date, and so during exam weeks like midterm week or final exam week, I would have like a couple of days in between my tests, and that would help out a lot. And here we have back-to-back tests, probably like there's for sure one every day of the week, and sometimes there's two on one day. So it's about like 6 to 7 tests in 1 week, and that can be very challenging at first. And I think, like Courtney said already, we're first years, we're still trying to find our groove. So that's probably the biggest difference that I noticed. And also learning about the eyeballs, because in undergrad I had no classes about the eye. I think I had like one lecture about the eye in my 4th year. It was like a neuro class, but that's about it. And now that like I'm getting to learn the things that I'm interested in, I think is a huge plus and a great difference. And my transition into optometry school, like Courtney, I took a gap year, and I think for me, I was really ready to embark on this SEO journey because I've been in one place my whole life. And I just had that urge to like spread my wings, and fly and do my own thing. And so I really wanted to come to SEO, so that really helped the transition, I think. And again, just building off of what Courtney said, SEO admissions, for some reason, they do an amazing job at choosing fantastic people. And like these people have become like the reason why I feel home here. And so I was really excited, and it was really fun to get to meet my friends, and super cheesy, but my family and my home. And yeah.
Well, thanks to both. That was really nice to hear. Flattering almost. But for the 3rd years on the line, I'm actually going to transition into a couple other questions just so we can make sure to get as much feedback as possible. So Kelly and then Jed, do you guys mind talking a little bit about your study schedule and maybe how that has changed over the last few years? How much time are you spending studying? When do you study? Where do you study? Those sorts of things. And I see more questions coming through. I promise, guys, with the questions, we will get to those.
So now that we as third years are kind of right in the midst of studying for part one of boards, our study habits are a little bit different than they definitely were during our first and second year. We have boards coming up in pretty much a month, and so basically all of my spare time and free time that I have right now is spent studying for boards. However, during the first and second year, it was a little bit different. I'm the kind of person that I don't necessarily like to study a little bit every day. And so kind of like Tim was talking about, we have these test weeks set up. And so there's 2 midterm weeks and 1 finals week per semester. And so I would tend to, if there wasn't a test week coming up, I wasn't really studying when I got home unless I had, a quiz coming up or if I had some sort of assignment to do or something like that. And then as it got about 2 weeks away from exam week, then I would really start to buckle down and start studying. But I kind of like that structure of the test weeks a little bit because it helps me know when I really need to be in peak study mode and when I can kind of relax a little bit more. And so I used to study a lot at school. One thing that's great about SCO is we have a ton of on-campus study space, and for me, I get nothing done when I'm at home, so that's great for me. I can come here and I can go in like a booth or a study room or anything like that, and I can get a lot of studying done there. Now that I'm kind of studying for boards and I've kind of almost burnt myself out studying at school a little bit during those first couple years, I like to study around Memphis. There's lots of coffee shops and little areas like that that are really great for studying. Memphis is home to a lot of health profession schools, so there's lots of kind of areas around the community to study, and I really like that because that's a great environment for me.
Yeah, very similar to what Kelly mentioned there. First and second year, studying kind of waxed and waned as we got closer to exam weeks. And definitely there was a lot of cramming that went on sometimes when you have 7 exams in 1 week. But I think over first and second year, I tried to get better at going over the material ahead of time. I was semi-successful with that. It doesn't always happen just because you have a lot of other responsibilities with classes, labs, and outside of school too. But I got some really good advice from another ambassador actually who gave me my tour when I came to school. I'm married. I've been married for about 5 years now, and he was married at the time and kind of talking about home life and how I'm able to spend time at home with my wife after school and would I have enough time outside of school to even have a life. And he gave me some really good advice. He said, basically, he treats school like a full-time job, that when he's on campus, he would give everything he had to studying, and then when he went home, he would be home with his family. And I really took that to heart, and it's mostly worked for me. I know there's times when I've had to stay late on campus, either to practice in the lab or I've had patients late at night, or maybe I had an exam the next day. But for the most part, overall, I've tried to keep to that, to where I'd study on campus after classes and labs till about 5, 6, 7 o'clock, and then I'd go home and be able to do things after school that I enjoy doing. So that was some great advice that I wanted to pass on to y'all as well. I love studying on campus too. It kind of helps keep me motivated. We've got a 6-month-old son at home, and he's a cute kid, so it's really hard to study when he's around. So, but so I try to stay on campus when I'm studying right now. We got a lot of really good new study space on campus on the new 4th floor diner. which is where I'm at right now. Actually, we've got some study rooms and lots of cubbies that all throughout campus that are great places to study, either individually or as a group study. So there's a lot of opportunities there on campus.
Awesome, thanks guys. So a related question, if anyone wants to jump in to answer, how do you study? Do you take notes in class and review recorded lectures, or do you not take notes and just listen? Or do you use the study guide provided by the class note takers? What strategies are you using to study?
I can jump in and take that one. It depends on the class. So some of the classes I feel like I really need to go on the recording and pause, slow down, repeat, and all of that sort of thing. Some of the lectures I don't feel like it's helpful to look on the recording, because my notes that are either provided by the teacher or the ones that I took in class get me through the material. So you can really gauge it through the classes. And as far as taking notes in class, even if they're totally not legible, it helps me just to stay engaged. Because when you're sitting through so many classes in the morning, especially during first and second year, I need to have something happening in my hand, something going on to keep me not on Facebook or like not texting. So that's how I study. All of the professors that we've had so far have provided PowerPoints online, or they've provided worksheets. Our theory and methods teacher, who you see a lot of first and second semester of first year, she provides packets with fill in the blanks. And so she lectures and you have, fill in the blanks. So it's kind of like something that you have to complete during class. And that helps me stay engaged.
I could add just a little bit to that too, if I could.
Sure.
Courtney mentioned earlier how it's a little bit different here at SCO than undergrad, because we're learning to think like doctors, and the way we study has changed quite a bit for that reason. I didn't do a whole lot of group study in undergrad. I always liked to study on my own, and I did have some groups for some classes, but not nearly as much as I have now. And it's been kind of a fun experience to be able to get in large groups and bounce ideas off of each other, because not all the answers are as black and white as they are, in classes in undergrad. Like was mentioned earlier, you have to work backwards. You have to work from signs and symptoms and some of the results from the testing that you get, and decide what's going on with my patient. And it's kind of fun to get in a large group and help each other throughout the classes, kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and it just really helps my studying quite a bit, helps me stay focused, and improves my study habits quite a bit.
All right, thanks to you both. So we have a variety of questions. I'm going to ask a few of the quick ones, and I promise we'll get to the rest. So one question that was related to the first year students who were saying that they took gap years. So how does SCO view gap years? And I'll quickly answer that from an admissions perspective to say that we totally don't mind to see students who have taken gap years. We understand that sometimes you want to do things with your life, whether it be work or travel or volunteering or whatever it may be, before you dive into such a serious commitment as optometry school. It is nice for us to see some productive use of that time. If you've been working or doing something with your time, shadowing even, but it's not something that we would necessarily really critique the time you spend in a gap year. Once you get beyond 1 year, we would start looking to see whether your OAT scores are still valid and how long it's been since you've taken some of your science classes. But in general, a gap year is not something that we frown upon by any means. Another question, are recorded lectures available? The answer to that is yes. We have a system here at the college called Integrity that does record lectures and makes them available for students to review after the fact. So that's a really good asset. A few questions that came up from a few students that I'm going to turn to the panelists are about technology. So the students are asking what technology has been helpful to use in class for note-taking or otherwise. You know, a laptop or an iPad or written notes. What do you feel like has been the best thing to use? So I don't know if there's one of our panelists that would like to jump in and answer that.
I could answer that. So I think for whether you're using your laptop or written notes or an iPad, I know friends who like prefer each one of those. So it's a very individualized preference. But since I'm answering the question, I'm just gonna say my preference. I'm in love with my iPad. I've been using it since undergrad, and I use this app called Notability. And I actually know Courtney uses this too, where we can just download the PowerPoints that the professors post and sync it right into this app called Notability, and we can just write, draw on it, and type on it. So you'll have all the notes that are already on there, as well as anything the professor says, you can just take right on there. And it's also compatible with this exam application that we use called ExamSoft. So the iPad is like a one-fit-all type of thing, and it works for me.
In addition to the lectures being recorded, every class also has a note taker that's elected by the class members. And so if you're really good at taking notes, then you can get paid by your classmates to take notes. If you're terrible at taking notes, then you can pay someone to take notes for you, which is great. So it's a win-win all around. But I know my class uses those notes quite a bit. And it's helpful for me because I know that there's a note taker for the class who's getting down those details, and it helps me kind of focus on the big picture during lecture rather than having to worry about small details. And then when the test comes around, I can go back and review those small details in the class notes. But it's really helpful for me to stay a little bit more focused on the big picture during lecture, and I feel like I get a little bit more out of lecture when I go. So between the class notes and Integrity, those are two very helpful resources. I'm a little old-fashioned. I print off the notes and I handwrite them too. It just kind of helps me. I'm very visual. But like Tim said, everyone's very individual, and everyone has their own preference.
Thanks, Jed. I'm actually going to ask you, Jed, to keep on going in response to one of the questions that was raised. Since you talked about all the resources that are available to students to help them understand and retain the information, how important is actual attendance in the lectures if the lectures are being recorded, is the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. It kind of depends on the class. Some professors require you to attend lecture, and they'll have an attendance that they take there. Some don't require attendance, and there's been some classes where there's maybe 15 people there out of the 130. So it just kind of depends on the class and depends on your study style. I get a lot out of going to lectures. During tests, I can kind of picture where I was sitting and what the professor was saying during a specific lecture, and that helps me to remember things on exams. But other people, they do just fine not having to go to class, and they can watch the lectures on their own. Integrity, you can speed it up, you can pause, you can rewind, and that's really helpful. So whatever as long as you're not required to go to the class, whatever your study style is, figure it out and adapt to it, and there's a lot of resources available for you.
All right, great, thanks. And then I'm going to revisit another topic that was mentioned, the gap year. We had a question about preparing for school if you've taken a gap year. So Courtney, since you took a gap year, do you want to talk a little bit about things that would be helpful to do to prepare for school while you're off for that year?
So for me, while I took my gap year, I also took my OAT in the summer of my gap year. So I had done a whole bunch of studying, kind of preparing for the OAT. I don't know if that's your situation, but I was also working in an office, and I was doing a lot of shadowing at the time. So I didn't really do a whole lot of, really hard academic preparation for coming here. But I do want to say that if you took a gap year or you didn't, or if you worked in an office or if you just shadowed, everybody really kind of starts on the same footing. There's not like, oh, those are the people who, worked in an office. They're doing so much better than everyone else. Everyone kind of comes in and we're all like, I don't know what we're doing here. And then you figure it out. And it's kind of everybody starts at the same level. And if admissions thinks you should be here and you've been offered a spot here, you should be here. And you're going to be kind of given all of the tools that you need to be successful here.
All right, that was really well put. So I want to make sure we are able to talk a little bit about extracurricular activities before we, wrap up. So again, I know that we have some more questions coming through, which we'll get to, but before we do, let's talk a little bit about some of the extracurricular activities that you're involved in. I guess to get to some of the other questions that I have that I might not show due to time constraints, if you guys want to talk for a little bit about what kind of things you do in your free time, whether it be extracurricular activities that are part of the SEO organization or things you like to do on your own time outside of the organization of the college. So Tim, why don't you kick us off with that topic?
All right, so in my free time, some of the extracurricular activities I'm involved in is OPP, which is a club that stands for Optometric Private Practice. And it's just a club where we have meetings. They have guest speakers who talk about just like the business side of private practice, of optometry, I mean. And one of the reasons, or one of my goals in life, in my career, is to start my own practice. So I think this is really helpful that they're having, they let the students have this resource, and that's a really fun time. And also, I love playing basketball and volleyball in my free time, and our activity center is like right across the street, and it's so nice. And I basically live there in my free time. The school also has intramurals where right now we just get to compete against, like, anyone can make a team, and we have like rivalries between years. I'm about to play the second years right after this, so wish me luck. And my other extracurricular activity is being a student ambassador, and I'm just that entails just like helping out entering students and just like being in for providing information. And because I feel like I was just in your guys' shoes not too long ago, so I feel like I want to just help out and give back. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. How about Courtney?
So as far as extracurriculars and things that I'm involved in at SCO, I'm part of the AOSA, and one of the cool things about SCO is that everyone at SCO has their dues for the American Optometric Student Association, which is the student affiliate of the American Optometric Student Association. All of the dues are paid for if you're a student at SCO, which is different from other schools. And so with that, everyone kind of gets to go out for leadership positions if they so choose. This year I was the first year representative, and now all of the other leadership positions are becoming open, and there's an application process, so I'm waiting to hear back on some of those things. And so with the AOSA, you do get to kind of learn about organized optometry and to learn about what laws are being in place in different states that affect how and what we can do as practitioners. So that one is very important, and I encourage everyone to be involved in that no matter which school you end up at. And the other thing, and I'm also an ambassador just like Tim, and that's a whole lot of fun. So if you get the opportunity to do that, do it. But I would like to talk about Memphis because I really love Memphis. And this city is weird in the sense that it's not New York City in the sense that like everything is like super on top of each other and there's like no space. You get kind of all of the benefits of a city while getting all of the space. So there is Shelby Farms Park, which is huge, and they've got a dog park, and I love dogs, and I have a dog, and I get to go to the dog park all the time. There are opportunities to go hiking. There's Shelby Forest, which is different from Shelby Farms. Shelby Forest, and you get to go hiking there, and there's actually some elevation changes, which is totally foreign to me being from Florida, but I've been really enjoying that. There's Riverside, which is by the big river that we have here. It's called the Mississippi. And then there is also a lot of music events going on. So in May, they have Memphis in May, which you guys might have heard about. The lineup for the Beale Street Music Festival just got posted, and that's going to be a lot of fun, and you should get your tickets. It's a 3-day music festival. That's just a little plug. Rebecca's looking at me like I should move on. And but Memphis is just so much fun, and obviously the food. If you like barbecue, if you like good food, this is the place to be.
No, Courtney, I can never hear enough good things about Memphis because I agree with everything you say. If you like food and music and just being entertained, this is the city for you for sure. So I have just about 8 minutes left with you guys to wrap up and get everyone on their way. So I'm going to cut off that question and then move to some of the questions that you all have posed. So one of the questions that I really like is, what is the process of thinking like a doctor? So that was brought up. And I've always been interested in how doctors think and to see if it matches the way that I think in some way. So if Jed or Kelly, would one of you want to talk a little bit about at least what you've learned or kind of what you've experienced in the transition into thinking from a student to thinking like a doctor?
I can talk about it a little bit, and these are kind of things that Jed talked a little bit about earlier, but what's different is I feel like in class a lot of the times, you're taught this is a disease, here are all the signs, here are all the symptoms, this is what you would find on testing and everything. And so I feel like that's definitely the student way of thinking about it. But when you get a patient in front of you, you don't know what the disease is, and so it's like a puzzle. You have to go off of what the patient's history is and what their complaints are and how they're seeing and all the different testing that you do and the symptoms that they have and the signs that they have, and then you have to piece it all together and then figure out what is going on and whether or not you need to be doing extra testing like an OCT or a visual field or anything like that. And so it's kind of almost like working backwards a little bit. But that's what I love about optometry so much is you have all of these working parts that you have to figure out how to put together and work that puzzle so that you can understand what's going on with your patient and how to best care for them and everything. And it's definitely an adjustment, and it's kind of hard to get used to that, but I feel like we start it from day one at SCO. Your first day in theory, Dr. Leibowitz, who is the theory and methods instructor, she's already getting you on the track of thinking like a doctor, and how all of our professors form questions for quizzes and tests and how they assess us and everything. It's to get us to that point so that we are able to think like a doctor right off the bat and not hesitate with that or anything. And so it's been a great experience. It was difficult at first, but now definitely something that comes a lot more natural as I've had a little more experience here.
That's great. Thanks, Kelly. Jed, could you answer the question about what exams are like? So I know everyone talked a little bit about exams, but Could you just describe what the exams are like and how they might differ from class to class, or what the experience is like here taking exams?
Yeah, absolutely. So exams are different for every class, just depending on the material. But our year was the first year to transition over to taking exams all on the computer. So they were paper and pencil before that. But SCO changed that because national boards, I don't know that this is the exact reason, but I know it's one reason. But national boards is on a computer now. They changed that over last year. So we're kind of getting used to taking exams on a computer, which, you know, we've all kind of taken the OAT before, but previous to coming to school here, that was the only exam I had taken on a computer before. And so it was kind of a learning curve for me, but it's very helpful. You're able to mark questions that you want to go back to, and you can leave comments and feedback. Sometimes it's free response, sometimes it's multiple choice. But for the most part, most classes are you have 2 midterms and a final, and most of them are multiple choice. Some of them, though, like Kelly was talking about, there's a few classes that we have that are a little more clinical based, and those ones you'll get patient data, and this is kind of further on in your first year to your second year, where you get patient data, you know, their age, demographics, what's going on with their vision, their history, and then you kind of have to present a plan from that and you know, write down some of the testing you want to do, what your tentative diagnosis is. Those tests can sometimes be a little bit stressful because you're under a time crunch too, but it's a lot of fun because you're able to use the knowledge that you've learned in all your basic classes and kind of build from there. So one thing that I know that we share with all incoming students is that you are required to have your own personal computer or device that handles the testing software. So just be aware of that, those who are coming into to school this fall and any other prospective students. So that is required to have your own personal computer for testing purposes. But other than that, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that was great, and thanks for that reminder about the personal computer, Jen. So a question I'll throw to our first years, besides the classes that are required for admission, so besides the prerequisite courses, are there others that you might recommend taking during undergrad that prepared you for the program? Courtney or Tim, do either of you have an opinion on that?
I think this is a required one, but I know that I am kind of wishing that I had paid better attention in stats right now. So if anybody is in statistics right now, listen. I think that's a big one, and this one is not required. I ended up taking anatomy and physiology. I know it's recommended. It's recommended for a reason. I have noticed that if you haven't taken anatomy, you do have to put a little bit more work in during that first semester anatomy course. But other than that, those are the only 2. Tim, do you agree with me about stats and VSP?
Highly agree, especially on the anatomy, because we have just regular anatomy and ocular anatomy and neuroanatomy first year, so anatomy will definitely help.
All right, and then back to the first years too, perhaps. The question was thrown out about the OAT, and we will focus on the OAT and prep and answer all sorts of questions in the next month's webinar. So maybe briefly, since we have just about a minute left, if one of you first years could talk a little bit about how much time you put into OAT prep and when you took the OAT, that would be great.
Yeah, I can talk about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Courtney. You got it.
Go, Tim. Go. Oh, okay, I'll go. So as far as the OAT goes, I'm talking really, really, really fast. I took the OAT on August 1st, and I only remember that because it was the first day of the month. I took OAT of August 1st of my gap year. I studied from May until the day before August 1st. I was doing an hour in the morning before I left for work. I did an hour during my lunch break. And then when I got off work, I was working full time. I did probably 3 hours. And then in the 2 weeks before I took the OAT, I took off work and I was pulling long hours studying. And I was using an MCAT prep book because I decided kind of last minute that I wanted to do optometry instead of medical school. So I was using an MCAT book, and then I was also using OAT Cracker and Crack the OAT for some practice tests.
All right, great, thanks. And then an inquisitive student is wondering, Courtney, why you mentioned stats. What do you do with stats?
We have, so one of our classes is called we call it VSP. It's called Visual Sensation and Perception. And our teacher likes graphs. And she, how the graphs work, how logarithmic functions work, how exponential functions work, and just the statistical part of it, which I am feeling very rusty on, and I will be pulling out some undergrad notes. I took stats my freshman year of undergrad. So I'm just feeling a little rusty on it. And one of my friends had mentioned, I really wish they had paid attention more in stats. And I was like, this is why I'm kind of feeling behind. So it was just kind of a product of a conversation I had the other day.
All right, super. And last question that I'll ask each of you to respond to, but try and keep it brief because we're a little bit over time, but it's a good question. So if you could mention where you live briefly, and briefly what you like about where you live. I know you each live in different areas of the city. So why don't we go Jed, Kelly, Courtney, and then Tim on where we live.
Yeah, so I live in Mississippi, actually. Memphis borders 2 other states, Arkansas, Mississippi, and I live in South Haven. It's a suburb. It's about 15-minute drive to campus, and it's not that bad of a drive at all. Traffic's usually pretty good. But I chose South Haven, Mississippi, just because it kind of got me out of the city, because I knew I'd be spending all day here in Memphis, and it was kind of an escape from the city, which was good for me because I'm kind of a small town guy. There's also a lot of people will go down to South Haven for shopping. There's a lot of Kroger's, Walmart, Target. There's a few malls down there too, so whatever you need is easy access, and my wife likes that. We also live right next to a park, and it just feels like I'm able to get outdoors a little more often, and I just love the area. Anywhere you go in Memphis, it's a great place. But I just happened on South Haven.
I live on Mud Island, which is not actually an island, but it's right along the Mississippi River. It's technically considered part of downtown Memphis. And what I really like about it is it's about a 10-minute drive from campus. And so it's far enough away for me that school feels like school and home feels like home. But I can come and go multiple times throughout the day if I needed to. It's really great because it kind of feels like a suburb of Memphis without actually being, a little bit further away from all the amenities of, the center of the city, like all the restaurants and all that kind of thing. It's also, like I said, right along the river, so there's this great running trail. Go for a run, go for a bike ride. There's lots of outdoor space there. And like I said, it kind of feels a little bit more like a small town within the city of Memphis. And I really enjoy that it's a little bit removed from school. And there's a lot of young people that live in that area as well, kind of like I mentioned before, lots of young health profession students. So.
And I live in East Memphis. My husband and I decided that we wanted to purchase a house. So we live in a home in East Memphis. I really wanted a backyard, which I can't get in an apartment because I lived in an apartment during undergrad and I didn't really want to do that again. So we have a house. We're about 15 minutes from school, and we're like 5 minutes from Shelby Farms, where I spend a lot of time. And yeah, I have lots of access to everything in the city. The interstate's nearby, so I can jump on and kind of enjoy anything. Kind of it's smack dab in the middle between the center of Memphis and anything going on in Mississippi.
And I live in Midtown, specifically right across the street from SEO, and I really like the commute. It's really nice. And also, it feels like a small town. It's like it's not downtown, but it's really open. It feels suburban to me, which is the type of personality that I am. And I'm also very close to Chick-fil-A, so I think I win.
Oh, I love it. All right, we had one more question come in, so I promise let's make this the last question. So the question is, besides Memphis, what about SEO really drew you to the school? So why don't you answer that in maybe a word or two? So what about SEO drew you to the school? I guess we'll go in the same order and then we'll wrap it up.
Definitely the clinic for me. I wanted to be the best doctor I could be out of school, and I felt like the clinic offered me that opportunity.
For me, it was definitely the people and the clinic and the clinical education that we have here.
People in clinic.
I'll just say Hayes Center, just because everybody took that already. But yeah, the business aspect of optometry, interesting.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you all for the great questions. I think this is the best webinar in terms of questions from the participants that I've been involved with thus far. So I really appreciate it. It does mean that we went over time a little bit, so I apologize. But hopefully y'all got a lot of value out of it. And of course, we are here in the office and on campus. If anybody has questions after the fact, you can reach out to the admissions office and we can answer questions or put you in touch with current students if you have any questions that you'd like to hear from their perspective. So thanks once again to all of you for being here, and we hope you tune into a future webinar. Thanks, guys.